But let's go to Brian S. with another big hand. As I remember it, you are up next. Thank you very much, sir, for being patient. How is it going?
It's going pretty good. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. All right, well, you got a hand for us here. Played out of where?
This is played out of Horseshoe in Baltimore. And this is a new game that myself and a group of players have tried to start, and we've been successful in getting it rolling.
By the way, Brian,
Um,
I do have to say, because this is going to be a big hand. One of the things I looked at your email, I was looking at this. I was looking at the size of the game and how big the pot's going to get, and I was like, Horseshoe Baltimore. I was like, what the
yeah,
hell?
yeah. This. So let me frame it up for you. So it's a 5-10 game
Okay.
with a $10 big blind ante and essentially a mandatory $25 straddle. After like the first half hour of the game, it was just on.
So
And it was kind of
it's a
expected.
public game or what?
Yeah, it's a public game. It was started by a group of players that have played 510 in other casinos in Maryland. So you're
Okay.
talking about like Maryland Live and MGM National Harbor. And Horseshoe is not really known for their higher stakes games, but it's a nice room with a staff that is generally pretty supportive, and they were willing to run the game for us. So we started the game, and it is a public game once it gets going.
I do
But
have, I have one thing. I mean, that is a great way to start a game because, and I could be, I mean, the only game that I know, and it's not really public, right? Because it's Hustler Casino Live that runs like a game with a big blind ante on a regular basis is the games that are on the show. Maybe there are some other ones I don't know about, but it's really nice because, you know, Skolansky, back in the day, like, No Limit should be a dead game, right? With two blinds and no antes because no one is ever incentivized to play in the pot. No Limit's always supposed to be played with antes. This is why No Limit tournaments always have antes. And then other forms of no limit poker, which aren't really all that popular. The one I always referenced, old school no limit, that the true catalog of poker is single draw deuce to seven, low ball. That was a big game. That's always played with an ante. No limit's always supposed to be played with an ante. But, post Moneymaker, it was just like, we don't need to play with an ante. People play with invisible antes from Skolansky,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
like
that's great. That's a great setup.
yeah, like if there were no blinds, the only hand you're supposed to play is aces, right?
Right,
Like
right. Yeah.
so yeah, as more money goes in, before cards are dealt, the wider people's ranges get and the more interesting the pots become, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was the literally the first night that we ran the game, and it's supposed to be a 1K to 3K. But that was very loosely enforced
Okay.
after the initial hour or two.
So it's in essence uncapped
Uh,
ish.
yeah, ish. But yeah, I mean, the game was playing big.
Okay.
So in this hand, we are 5,500 effective.
Okay. 5,500 effective. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So actually the action folds around to the button,
Okay.
who raises to 75,
Okay.
and I am next to act in the small blind with Queen of Clubs, Jack of Clubs.
Queen of clubs, jack of clubs in the small blind, two blinds
Yes,
behind you with an ante.
correct.
I'm assuming you're going to three bet here.
I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to 300.
Okay. So 4x. Yep.
Yep. And the blinds fold, straddle folds, and the villain calls.
All right. So button calls, and we're off to a pot of 600 ish and maybe 630, 640, something like that.
Yeah, 650 after the blinds and
Okay.
straddles
So
and
650.
ante.
650. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that's pretty standard up to that point.
I do. Yeah. Especially when you got a lot of dead money out there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the flop comes down, Queen of Diamonds,
Mhm.
Nine of Spades, Four of Spades.
Queen of Diamonds, nine of spades, four of spades. So hero has top pair, front door flush draw. And again, I think a lot of people sometimes, I mean, the easiest thing to look about when you're thinking about ever, say, checking on the flop or doing some sort of pot control, or it's not always a check 100. I think for beginning players that haven't necessarily studied a lot of just board textures, if a board does not contain a straight and does not contain a viable two pair, you are allowed to do more betting. So this is much different than if the board was, say, like Queen 10 7, or how about queen 10-8 and you held kings, or queen 10-8 and you held aces. This is a board where hero has top pair. Now he doesn't have the best kicker. There's a front door flusher out there, but like there's still no straight or two pair that should be represented all that much. Plus hero blocks top set. Now, I don't necessarily know what the sizing would be, quote unquote, in an optimal type of setting, but I would probably tend to think that you could probably go 2/3 here for those reasons on a flush draw board. Again, you can keep it simple and go like 1/3 with a large number of hands, and then sometimes I guess you mix in a check, but I would tend to not check for those reasons.
Yeah, I kind of saw this board as more of a range bet board. I didn't. I really liked my suits at this point. I liked unblocking the spades. I liked having the jack in my hands because I could, potentially have some backdoors there as well. And I don't think that the villain's going to have many queens, considering that I have a queen, and ace queen might get 4-bet off at some frequency.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt pretty secure in my holding at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went 1/3. I bet 200.
Okay.
And the villain pretty quickly calls.
So button calls. And now we're at 1,050.
Yep.
Okay.
Turn is the jack of diamonds.
All right. So jack of diamonds. So hero turns top 2. Queen 9-4 jack. Hero has queen jack. And the only thing that changes if the hero was ahead and now behind is if obviously the button on this particular card is if the button had king 10, right?
King 10.
10-8, yep. Or the one combo of maybe jack, which would be pretty unlucky, but possible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Again, I think jack probably gets 4-bet in that configuration, but again, it's definitely possible that they have jacks. 10-8 I think is pretty infrequent at this point. I think that probably gets folded pre. The one hand that I was specifically concerned about would be king 10.
By the way, I will also too, when I was saying 2/3, I know that is not reflected as much in a 3-bet pot like this as a single raise pot. So there is that something of note there where you'll see single raise pots it go larger. This one is kind of interesting because it's probably reflected with I'm not running a solver here. And I don't study this, but I don't study this stuff all that much, and people don't run solvers in their head. So I'm just giving you my take off the cuff from my experience in running these situations in the past. This card is checked a lot. It's checked a lot. Now, how does that factor in with your specific combo? I would still tend to bet a fair amount here. And, if you're betting a fair amount, you're blocking, obviously, queens, you're blocking jacks. Sure, the guy could have king 10. And then the question is he raising some combo draws like 10x of spades that are just called off on the flop? Obviously, if you get raised, you can call, across to rivers, but I would still, be doing a fair amount of betting here. It's just interesting to note that, what would you be doing here with aces? What would you be doing here with kings? And you can balance some of your thick value hands, queen jack being one of them, with an ace king or an ace 10 double barrel too, right? If you want to play balance in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were going to bet, what size would you choose? Because I know what I did, and I after the fact I questioned it some. And if you want to get into what the solver says, we could do that, but I know that's not really what we're here for. So I'll tell you, I went 750 on this.
Yeah, I would tend to go with larger sizing here. Yeah. However you chop that up, whether it's 2/3 or pot. And also the same thing with ace king and ace, I don't know how often you're gonna have ace 10 off here. Ace 10, flush draw, like 10x, again, it gets kind of condensed. How often are you gonna have there's one combo like ace 10 of spades, but ace king with the ace of spades, something I think a lot of those things take large sizing here. On the turn off the cuff,
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good approach.
Yeah.
When I put the bet out there, I thought it was strictly for value. And then I got raised. So villain raises to 2100.
So, okay. So hero bet 750, queen 9-4 jack. Again, hero has queen jack of clubs. By the way, your connection sounds awesome, Brian. Your audio. But just to point that
Oh,
out.
I do YouTube, so I have a decent audio
Oh, okay.
setup
All
here.
right, cool.
Yeah, yeah,
So hero goes 750 here on the turn and raised to 2100.
yeah. Which I thought was kind of a. I mean, I guess standard when you look at it, it's basically 3x. But when you look at our SPR at that point, it makes things really awkward.
23, 25. Because it's like if you call, there'll be 3,000 left. Is that what it is? Ish?
Yeah, there would be about 3K behind, and the pot will be over 5,000 if I make this call.
Interesting, interesting, interesting. Now, so are you in a situation where this should be a... Yeah, there's a lot of things going on here. I don't think it's an absolute jammer fold type of scenario. When if you have 3,000, if you have more than, if the pot is like more than half SPR, I don't think it's always a jam or fold. You know, as it gets shallower, you should be. But it's really, really close, because then you're in a situation where if he does have a combo draw and he doesn't bluff, you lose that value, right? And then the question is like, if you call, does that mean that you are always calling on a blank if he jams? Or are you sometimes playing a game of like Fifth Street chicken here, where if the river's like a red deuce and he but you're going to be getting some great pot odds. So it's hard for me to continue here and then not check call on a blank. I think, especially at this level where we would think that people would be, capable. The times that I would do that, which would be like call with equity and then fold to a river, even on this type of situation, is like if I was up against a guy that underbluffed, like an old man coffee type, and I had enough equity where I thought I can continue like with a set. You know what I mean? Like say you had middle set here instead of
all the players in this game were very competent. It was a pretty tough game. So I wouldn't put anything past them, to be honest.
Boy, this one's close, because I could see you. Could you? I don't know if. I think probably folding is the one that I would do the least of the options, right? Calling or jamming, because I could see for those reasons. Just I could. It's close, man, with the stack sizes here, because then you get some cards here too where you might not. There are certain situations where you actually could possibly get bluffed off the best hand at the end here too. We don't usually think about that like in the whole equation, but it's definitely hard to play from out of position. Sounds like you called, right?
I did call, but as far as what you were saying, being bluffed off the best hand, the hands that might want to do that kind of thing are hands that probably have a 10 or a king in them, like one pair plus draw kinds of hands. That just
seem like it's going to be transparent what comes in at the end. You mean?
Yeah, that are just going to blast. They're just going to blast at the end, no matter what. And I could probably figure out based on what the river is. But you've made a point in the past where the thing that changes on the end is the bet, right? So if me being out of position does kind of muddle things, because I'm going to have to act first, and then he has all the incentive in the world to just blast off.
Yeah. And then again, if he's structuring correct, and then the downside of just calling, of course, too, is you don't get the value from a hand that would call off now that won't bluff on the river, which is probably going to be a lot of the front door stuff, right? Like if he raised here with ace 10 of spades, okay, and you called and the river is a red deuce, that hand's probably it shouldn't really be a bluff that much at the end, right? When you only have 3,000 left, even if he doesn't have showdown value. I'm just saying that he's blocking all the stuff that you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's,
yeah.
So
I see what you're saying for sure.
So you call. So now the pot is what, 5,200 and change?
52, 5250, I think.
Yeah.
And the river is the deuce of clubs. So basically as bricky as it gets.
Deuce of clubs. Okay. So you get the brick.
Yep. And I check.
So again, just to run it back here, 510 ante 20 25 straddle here, button goes to 5,500 effective, button is 75, hero on the small blind 3 bets, queen jack of clubs to 300, button calls 650, queen 9-4 2 spades where the queen is not a spade, hero bets 200, button calls, turn is the jack of diamonds for top 2, hero bets 750, gets raised to 2,100, hero calls, pot's like 5,250. Looks like these guys have like right around what 28, 29, 30 left, something like
There was
that.
about 3K behind. Yeah, at that point.
And the
It was
river's a
maybe a little bit less, but it was about if it
right,
was
right,
three
right.
thousand dollars.
So the river's a deuce. So queen nine four, jack deuce, and I assume you check.
I do check.
Okay.
Yeah. And the villain jams pretty quickly. So I don't know if you want to get into anything, but I could tell you what I did and why.
Well,
Um,
let's just think about it here. What I said on the before you do a reveal.
sure.
I mean, if you think that somebody is capable of putting you in a spot is good enough in position with respect to how the board has run off, and it's true in what I'm saying where this turn is really reflected as a check a lot, then, and you did bet, he might maybe think that you're betting a little bit too much and that you can be put in quite a spot here. I just think that now again off the cuff it's kind of hard to say because of the combos, right? Like you wouldn't, you want to not have a spade in your hand, you want to not have a 10 in your hand, which you don't have those things, so
Right.
that's good, right? So it gives him more.
Diamond also.
Yep. Yeah, diamonds as well, structuring correctly. So you don't have those things. So properties of your bluff catcher are fairly good, and it is a brick. So I mean, you're going to be getting close to 3-1. I think I probably flick in the call here now. I mean, that was my whole thing on the turn.
It took me probably 2 or 3 minutes as I kind of worked through the whole hand in my head, and I came to the conclusion that the hands that I'm losing to here are King 10 suited and pocket nines. And I thought
You don't think he has
about,
like 10-8 ever this wide?
I discounted that really heavily. It's not something that I really considered. But maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I thought at the time. And I didn't block either of the flush draws, and the fact that there were, a lot of missed draws out there between the diamonds, spades, and straight draws, I thought he had way more bluffs than value, so I eventually did call. And he turned over ace 10 offsuit.
Ace 10 offsuit, did he have the ace of spades?
He had the ace of spades.
So has that, no, they got the 10. Now, it's actually pretty close. People might say, oh, that's just a fold pre. Not usually like in a late configuration where the small blind is going to be incentivized to 3-bet off. I actually think that's to defend. I've seen good players defend all the way down, like I said, to king jack off there. When you're thinking about what the small blind's going to always VPip as a 3-bet or fold, and it's a button open. Obviously, the guy opened from under the gun. It's a snap fold, right? So
Right.
I don't really mind the way the guy played it, and I'm assuming if a spade comes, I mean, his bluff will get through here, right? A fair amount.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah. So I mean, that in itself is quite interesting. The other thing of note here, I was just kind of trying to go around with, because it's so obvious that like a 10 can be a draw here. Like, would it be more credible, or would it be a better line for him to find some other hand that he could bluff without a 10? I'm not saying the bluff of the 10 is bad, but like somehow if he had like something with like an 8 in it, where you're gonna have to give him credit for the open enders that come in on the king and the 8 side, and he gets to bluff those, and then he can catch like an interior gut shot, or even like a hand like ace king or king jack or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Where he actually doesn't have a 10, but he's gonna get credit for it when it comes in on the top, on the bottom.
I think him having a 10 at the end is bad for him. Like he wants me to have the 10s, right?
Yeah.
So, but at that point, I think he just thought that he had one way to win the pot. So he just went for it. But yeah, I mean, I just was in a situation where I was basically at the top of my range at that point, and I kind of had to call.
Yeah. Well, nice call. Appreciate it, Brian.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move on here to our last